Welcome back to another episode of Open Source Cafe. Today we have Joe Nash over here with us. Welcome, Joe, to the podcast. Really nice to have you here. Would you like to
Hi,
tell our
thanks so much
audience
for
a
having
little
me.
bit more about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So as Kunal said, my name is Joe. I am a developer educator over at Twilio. I work on Twilio Quest, Twilio's educational video game. So if you're learning to code and you want to do it in, a fun way, we have this cute little 16-bit video game that you can code with. In the past, I have spent the last couple of years doing freelance DevRel consultancy, working with a variety of companies on their DevRel and community strategy. And prior to that, probably the thing that most people know me from is my work on the GitHub education team, where I created the Campus Experts program and in general did a lot of student hackathon stuff. So that was super fun, which I believe is where we met. So yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
This video is sponsored by Teleport. Are you juggling with shared secrets, SSH keys, or hopping between VPNs and multiple access points? Check out Teleport to quickly access your computing resources from anywhere. Teleport allows engineers and security professionals to unify access for SSH servers, Kubernetes clusters, web applications, and databases across all environments. With a unified resource catalog, there is no need to maintain inventories. You can also work together to troubleshoot a problem with your colleagues on a remote server or on each other's laptops and record these sessions as well using shared sessions. Teleport also provides ready-to-use auth for your internal web applications. Easily implement security and compliance with Teleport to adopt industry best practices for access across all protocols and all environments with minimal configuration. How does it work? Teleport is a single binary which enables secure access to SSH nodes, Kubernetes clusters, web apps, and databases. Deployed as a single binary, it seamlessly integrates with the rest of your stack. Get started with Teleport now and try it for free. Check out the links in the description below for more information. Yeah, super excited for this one. And today we are going to talk about, everything related to like DevRel and remote work and some best practices because that's the world we live in right now. And many students also ask this. And even if you're not working remotely, let's say as a student, you're contributing to open source, these tips will be really beneficial to you. Before moving on to that, can you tell us a little bit more about Developer Educator? Like, what is that about? What is your role about?
My roles are always a little bit weird, and my role at Twilio is no different than any before, which has always been a little bit weird. So the developer educators at Twilio essentially are, like various people who work on educational resources for developers. So the developer education team incorporates, for example, the docs writers. It incorporates various training facilities. So Twilio has this thing called Superclass, which is like a training event. They are developer educators. It includes my colleague Margaret, who works on Twilio Quest as well, but does a lot of community outreach around Twilio Quest. And then in my case, I am mostly helping folks in formal education use Twilio Quest. So I work a lot with teachers and with students, helping them learn. So it's the title is a little bit all over the place, even within Twilio. Like it incorporates lots of different roles. The important thing is, so go ahead.
No, I was just saying, is it like Twilio specific title or is it like a
I'm sure other people have the title, but in Twilio, it's being used for a very particular thing, which is people in the developer education organization. And we all do slightly different things, but the common thread and the reason we all have that title is because we're all focused on helping developers learn in some way or another. Often that's about Twilio. For some of us, that's a little bit more general. But yeah, that's the kind of uniting thing. But yeah, very like for myself and for Margaret especially, it's almost a developer advocacy role is very similar.
This video is sponsored by Datree, a tool that you can use to prevent Kubernetes misconfigurations from reaching production. Using Datree, you can catch misconfigurations in the development phase and set or create policies to receive failure alerts. It's useful for different stages of deployment and helps you measure resource usage by applying mandatory labels to workloads. 10,000 plus engineers are already using Datree. Check out the links in the description below to get started today. And I think it's important to also note that when you're talking about educational programs and stuff, it does not really mean just for students, because even professionals are students when they're learning something new, right? So
yeah,
most definitely. By the way, the links, I will link all of these things in the description. So if you want to check it out, make sure you check out the description. And let's get started. Now, before we move forward with like the remote work experiences and all these are the main theme of the podcast. At this show, I like to highlight the human side of people, right? Not just work related. So let's talk a little bit more about how you got here, right? Let's go back to the very beginning of your high school. Were you always in tech in high school, or were you like a really bright student, like high grades and stuff?
I was not always in tech. I've always been really interested in computers because I'm a big video gamer and really enjoy gaming, and so that's how I got into tech. But in my high school, we didn't teach computing or programming, and actually this is very true. So I'm from the UK. I now live in Amsterdam, but I'm from the UK, and this is very true of the UK in general. So the UK used to, when I was in high school, basically only taught IT, which was essentially just learning how to use Microsoft software. It was just, learning how to use Word and Excel and that kind of thing. They actually reformed the curriculum and introduced computer science for all ages in 2013, which was unfortunately well after I finished high school. I was nearly finished with my degree by then. So I missed out on all of that. But that is now a thing that happens. Yeah, so for me, it was like, hey, I was always into computers. I was, quite good with them. I was part of the, there's always that like, well, I don't know what it's like, and I know that programming education hits much earlier for a lot of the listeners, but I guess in the UK there's always like a pocket of nerds who are like really into computers versus everyone else, and I was very much in that group, and so my tech journey really actually started through gaming, mostly through a game called Garry's Mod, which is not super popular nowadays, but basically Garry's Mod was a physics sandbox built on the Half-Life 2 engine, and so it was like kind of like playing with Lego. Like you could just jump in and build stuff from all of the props that were in that game, and you could slap them together. But Garry's Mod was moddable in Lua, which is a scripting language out of Brazil. It's very popular for scripting in games, especially because it's really lightweight. And so there was a couple of things kind of happening. Like me and my friends were playing Garry's Mod a lot, and as we got into it, we started to mess around with the extensions. But we also started, we wanted to run our own server, and so we learned about Linux and server hosting, and we wanted to have our own, we wanted to be like a proper guild, and so we had our own forum. So we had a PHP BB forum, and we needed to manage that. And so me and my like high school friend group kind of all got into programming and Linux and sysadmin and all this kind of stuff through our Garry's Mod server. And it's really funny actually. Just the other day, this friend group who now we've been doing this now for like 20 years, we're just talking the other day about how we all ended up doing programming jobs, even though none of us studied programming in high school, and it's probably all because of that gaming. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me. And so from there, I went and did computer science at university because I was like, hey, I like this stuff. I guess computer science is how I learn more about it. And I studied at the University of Nottingham, and that's where I got introduced to hackathons and kind of led into everything else that I've done since.
Yeah, that's really interesting because in computer science, I believe, like, to be quite frank, the degree does not really matter that much. So right. I know people who did their bachelor's in electrical, and now they're doing some computer science role, right?
Sure.
The reason being because of all these programs, like the boot camps and everything is available online, and it's heavily available on the domain in computer science. I haven't seen much in terms of like, hardware or electrical. There might be some, I know many open source projects who are there. So hopefully in the future, because the computer science community I've seen like with in terms of like opportunities and even remote stuff, I think it's grown really fast.
I do think it varies.
Like
the conversation about whether computer science degrees matter is always really interesting because, a lot of people who have computer science degrees say the computer science degree doesn't matter, and a lot of people who don't have computer science degrees are like succeeding in tech and doing really great work, but find themselves, wanting to learn those fundamentals. I think ultimately, like, the real thing is that, like, technology in general is a really wide and diverse field, and it includes lots of things, and you don't necessarily need to, there's lots of paths into it, but what skills you're going to need day to day is going to change with the job. You mentioned electrical engineering degrees. Actually, there was always a joke, even in my university anyway, that electrical engineering was a completely different school. It also taught programming. There was like kind of a joke amongst us as computer science students that they were much better programmers because if they did it wrong, their stuff explodes. If we do it wrong, we just get an error message in the terminal. So like there was like a different degree of caution, and I still believe that. And I think it's like, when we talk about, you mentioned boot camps, I think it's a great example of like, hey, if you want to do websites, you probably don't need a CS degree, right? Like a lot of that stuff isn't taught in computer science because that's not really what computer science is about. And there's lots of routes into it. But if you want to do, as you said, hardware, it's much harder to learn hardware yourself, mostly because, you can't, it's expensive to build an electronics lab at your home to learn about it. And then, if you want to be a compiler engineer, a boot camp's probably not going to get you there either. Not saying it won't, but like you might find yourself frustrated and wanting to learn more core computer science. So it just really depends where you end up. And the important thing is just that, like, there's no one path to success, but to take that the other way as well, which is like, when you hear people talking about like, hey, I don't have a CS degree, you don't need one either. That's true for them. Everyone's experiences are true for them, may not be true for you, and to just really think about what you want to do and how you can get there.
The grass is always greener on the other side.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So what Joe mentioned, like, look at various people's experiences, see what works for you. But in the end, the skills do matter quite a lot. And even in high school and even in college, the curriculum, when you're talking about, like, Joe mentioned that they started learning about like Linux and stuff. And so when you start with like so I work in like DevOps related stuff. And the things that we work on with like SRE and stuff, the things that you learn in college, those are very crucial. So even if you are not learning these things in college, highly recommend you to learn it outside college as well, be that via online courses or whatever. Thanks a lot for sharing, Joe. That was a very great explanation. So let's talk a little bit more about your how's your college life like? Were you like really like they show in the movies or?
No, so UK college life is very different from, I guess, what most people see in the movies would be US college life. I guess just like the main way that I will describe like how bizarre UK, the big difference between like movie college life and UK college life. I was absolutely shocked when I heard it was like the norm in lots of countries for college students to share rooms, not just like apartments, but to actually be in the same room. We don't have that issue in the UK. So yeah, it's what's my college life like? God. So University of Nottingham is a.
When was it?
I started 2011. Yeah, I started 2011 and graduated 2014. I did a 3-year degree. I did Bachelor's of Computer Science. Nottingham is a town in the Midlands in the UK, so it's not a super huge town. It's not a small town either, but it's not like, it's not Manchester or Birmingham or London. It's a campus university. So and I'm sure this is true in lots of places, but in the UK we have universities where, the buildings are just kind of in the city and they're a normal building. Nottingham is quite different in that it has a huge piece of land and it has a campus on it. And so that was where I was studying. And yeah, it was a really lovely time. It was my story into Nottingham is actually, I don't know if there's any UK students listening. The UK system, the university system, basically, when you're doing your what we call college, so we call it university. College is 16 to 18, and it's the classes that you do to get the grades you need to go to university. So when I was doing my sixth form college, in the age 16 to 18, in the UK system, basically you have to make two choices. You make a choice for a first university and a second university. And if you get the grades for the first university, that's where you go. And the second university will be the one that has like a lower grade requirement, right? So, for example, my first choice was Southampton and my second choice was Nottingham. And I had chosen Southampton. I can't remember why I chose Southampton, but I was really fixed on going to Southampton, but it needed a really high math grade, and I was not super great at math. And I missed the grade and ended up going to Nottingham. And so yeah, I guess the reason I'm going on this tangent is because I actually always thought that was kind of like fate, and I was really happy that happened, because I did the thing that I think is really common for a lot of university students where, like, I didn't really understand the degree before I applied to it, and I didn't really look at the universities before I applied to them, but Nottingham kind of turned out to be the perfect place for me. So yeah, it was a really nice experience, and it was all pretty normal until second year. So I was just learning JavaScript learning Java and Haskell. That's what's taught in Nottingham, as well as like C and ARM. And I thought I was going to be a software engineer at a consultancy or something like that. And then I encountered my first hackathon, and I can't remember. God, what was the first one? Was NASA Space Apps in London, and I went there with a couple of other students and absolutely fell in love with them. And at the time, student hackathons weren't a thing in the UK. So we fell in love with hackathons, and we were going to all of these like community hackathons, like professional hackathons, and we were always the only students there. And we started a club around it, and we're trying to get more students to go to these things. And yeah, we went to like 10 in that first year. And after that, we were kind of then thinking like, hey, there should be more. We need to get more students to these. These are amazing. We're having such a good time. Let's organize a student one. And a couple of other students in different universities were kind of having the same experience at the same time. So there was Bilawal and Saif from Manchester, and the King's College crew, whose names at the time I've completely forgotten. But there was the King's College crew as well, they basically those three unis kind of around the same time started organising their first student hackathons, and then from there it just kind of exploded. And then student hackathons were everywhere in the UK, and so that was kind of like what the last like year and a half of my university degree was all about. You know, I was still studying, still pursuing my degree, but I think it was really more defined by finding my community basically, and finding that I really enjoyed this thing, and pursuing that and trying to help other people experience that. And although, you know, my degree has been very useful for a variety of reasons, I think really the common thread through my career since has definitely been hackathons. Anyone who knows me will know I'm very big into Haskell and really like functional programming. That's because University of Nottingham has a really good functional programming lab, and so we're exposed to Haskell in quite a serious way, and if we want to, you can basically do your whole degree in Haskell. And so whilst I was doing hackathons, I was also pursuing that, and I did get onto a PhD program to basically, you know, pursue that. And so I moved up to St Andrews in Scotland for a little while, but ultimately, like, that was kind of the end of my college experience. Like, I left that PhD program after 6 months just because I was having, but in contrast, I was having such a good time with hackathons and developer relations. I was like, I think this is more for me than the academic life. So yeah, that was kind of where it ended.
So is it like you got the motivation from there that's what you wanted to do full time in the education field?
Yeah, it's weird. And so the reason that one of the things I really enjoyed about, one of the reasons I got really into Haskell was basically just because the field of programming language research, like, it exposed me to programming language research. So I guess like I had the shell shock that a lot of people new to programming have pretty quickly, which is like, you know, oh, actually these programming languages are like hard to use in weird and unintuitive ways. Like, they are not intelligent tools, right? Like, why do I as the human have to explain things so granularly to the computer? Like, why isn't this smarter? And so when I encountered, you know, type systems in Haskell and that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, there is a way that this can be better. And so I was really interested in, like, the path I thought I was going to go on was basically programming language research to make programming better for developers, was what I wanted to do. And so that was kind of my thing, and why I wanted to pursue a PhD and why I wanted to pursue research was to try and contribute to, you know, making programming less painful.
Did you?
No, well, so this is the thing, right? So I started doing that as a PhD, and then I encountered developer relations, and, you know, I met people like Cristiano Betta, who at the time was at PayPal, and John Stevenson at Heroku, who, you know, were these people whose job was helping developers. And I was like, oh, that's another way I can help developers that happens to pay money and is really fun. Or I can sit in a quiet room in Scotland for 6 years. And so I chose to go the other way. So basically it was like I encountered a career that allowed me to do what I thought was important at the time, which was, you know, making software development suck just a little bit less. And I found a way to do it where previously I thought the only way to do it was academia. So that was kind of the thing that took me into DevRel in the end, was the same thing that I was trying to pursue as an academic, but I guess a more personally, it was more aligned with my, like, community-centric interests at the time.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about, like, right after college, right? So
yeah,
was that like your first role as well with developer advocacy and all these
things? So my after college was chaos. So I was doing a bunch of things at the same time. So as I mentioned, like, it was all around hackathons. So this little group I kind of mentioned, started student hackathons in the UK, and about 2/3 of us went on to start Major League Hacking UK. So we linked up with the MLH guys in the US, and, you know, we were saying, hey, we're trying to get this thing going here, and they were like, oh, you know, that's what we do, let us help you. And so we started working with them. So I was part of MLH UK, which became MLH Europe, and then to rewind a little bit, I'd said we were going to all of these professional hackathons. One of those professional hackathons was PayPal Battle Hack. So this no longer happens. The last one was 2015. But if you didn't encounter Battle Hack, basically it was a hackathon series that PayPal held, which had a World Cup structure. So they would do the hackathon in 14 cities all around the world, and the winners of those cities got flown to PayPal HQ in San Jose to compete for a big prize. My student team won at PayPal Battle Hack London 2013, and so we went to the finals. That was the first time I ever went to America, and the first time encountering Silicon Valley, I guess. So we went to the finals. We were one of only 2 student teams at the finals, and we got completely destroyed. Like we had no chance of winning that. The team that won was Moscow, and they were very, very good. But while I was at this hackathon, I was saying to the developer relations team that ran it that, like, this is the best hackathon I've ever been to. I love hackathons. I organize hackathons. How can I get in on this? How can I be part of this team? And they were like, I guess we can do an internship. And so they made an internship for developer advocate. A couple of us applied for it. I ended up getting it. And so that last summer of my degree, between my bachelor's and my PhD, I interned at PayPal doing developer advocacy. And so straight after college, I'm doing 3 things, right? I'm working for MLH, trying to make hackathons a thing, working for PayPal, doing developer advocacy, and I'm trying to do a PhD. You can see why the PhD didn't survive at this point, right? I think I was probably in Scotland for like less than a day a week at some points. My poor supervisor was probably deeply unhappy with me. But yeah, so that was kind of what was going on. And then over time, I was just, getting more and more out of the developer advocacy role. And at the end of the summer, I was like, I'd really like to stay around. Can I stay around part-time? And they said yes. And then, 6 months later, I was like, I don't think the PhD is working for me. Can I join full-time? And at this point, they pranked me. It was awful. Oh my God, I will never forgive them. We were at PayPal Battle Hack London 2014, I want to say 2015. We were at a PayPal Battle Hack. We were at an event, an event that I was running, was very stressed as it was. I was part of the team organizing it, and all of the leads of our team were there, and I had asked about a month earlier to join full time. And halfway through the hackathon, they asked the 3 team leads asked me to come in for a chat, and they take me off to this quiet room, and they're all sat around this table, this round table in this back room. And they sit me down, and they just start grilling me. They're asking me all these questions about my work, and they're implying I'm in trouble. And then about 5, and I'm losing I'm absolutely oh my God, what have I done? And then in 5 minutes, one of them bursts out laughing, and it turns out the whole thing was just a wind up, and actually they were there to tell me that I was allowed to join the team full time, but they had staged this elaborate prank in the middle of the hackathon to just scare the life out of me. It was it was very mean. And the other thing about that as well, which I didn't know at the time, so by this point I've been doing Battle Hack for a really long time. And this was the first one in London for a while. So they invited my mum to come to this hackathon to see what it was like. So my mum turned up to the hackathon and was there. The first, she'd like, hey, my son does this weird hackathon thing. What are these? And so my mum came along, and she'd been there for a really long time, and she was just sitting around. And I was like, oh, it's okay, you can leave now. You don't have to stay here for the whole hackathon. But she was like, no, I'll stay. It turns out my manager had told her that something was going to happen during the hackathon and that she should stay around. So she was in on this. I was not. And yeah, so that's kind of how that was my post-college. And yeah, after that I ended up doing PayPal full-time, and was there for about 2.5 years before I left and joined a startup after that.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Joe. Yeah, that was great. We talk more about this startup culture and remote work and all these things.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned from your story, you've been working with students and in the education space. So I have a question for you. So you've been working with people around the world, right? As you're working with APAC students as well in the
Sure.
UK and the US. Speaking about the university, culture or whatever, if you were given a superpower to change
Right.
something about it,
Sure.
what would you change? What do you think people are lacking
About university
in terms
culture?
of? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the biggest thing I think I would like if I could snap my fingers and have one thing change tomorrow, it would be to just eliminate the idea of competition. Like to eliminate the idea that, especially when it comes to hackathons and these community events, that they have to be competitive. So this has always been something that, like, you know, it's something I see. You know, you mentioned I did some work in APAC. I've done a lot of work in India through GitHub and also through Major League Hacking, and this is something that I think is especially true there, where like hackathons are deeply competitive, and obviously, you know, that's to do with the economic situation and all kinds of things. But it was also always a thing in the US and the UK as well, where hackathons were competitive from two angles. The organizing team, you know, always wants to be the best in the biggest hackathon, and people at the hackathon always wanted like be the best hack. And I think that like things are just so much better in so many ways when you approach hackathons not as a competition but as a learning or a community experience. MLH has this slogan, which is learn, build, share.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I just want that. Those three things. It actually originally came from one of Cristiano's hackathons, Hacked.io. But like those three things, I think are like really important to internalize. As like, hey, if you want to be successful in like any tech space, just keep learn, build, share in mind. Like you're there to learn something new, build something with it, and share it with the crowd. And like, there's no winning at the end of that, right? Like if you do those three things, you have won. You have furthered your skills. You have met new people. You've made new connections, and you've built something. That's it. You've won. Who cares about the prize? You've won something. And so like, I think, you know, I've won a couple of hackathons. I haven't even submitted what I've built at far more. And you know, some of my favorite hackathons, the ones I think most fondly of, are the ones where I look back at the projects, are not hackathons where I won anything at. Like all of my friends now are people I met at hackathons, and if I, you know, was focused on them as competitions, I probably wouldn't have met those people because I wouldn't have been taking the time to meet that, to like hang out and do that. And yeah, I just have like a bunch of reasons why I think de-emphasizing competitions at hackathons would be really great for the college community. And this is a battle that I don't think I will ever win. So if I had a superpower, I would 100% imply this tomorrow.
One thing you can do is on the individual level for all the students who are watching right now. They can do this on an individual level, right? So if you could give them one advice, right, to make the most out of their college life.
Yeah.
Go.
I would. God, this is hard because like I am in proper old man mode about college now. I realized the other day that it's coming up on 10 years since I started college, which is in itself terrifying. Make sure you get a rounded experience, I guess, is the thing. So I've seen this go both ways, right? Like I'm a big advocate for hackathons and community activities, and that's what I define my college thing by. But like, I still left time for my studies. I still did reasonably well. I still pursued academic interests while pursuing that. And I think I've seen both extremes. Like I've seen people who, you know, are so focused on getting the absolute maximum grade that they never participate in anything except their degree. And I've seen people who get so caught up in in the other activities that they let their degree falter. And I think the one, I guess, like if I were to succinctly state this, sorry, I'm going to put it by my nose. If I were to succinctly say one thing, it would be like, be conscious of diminishing returns, right? Like there is a point in anything after which you basically like, it's like the 80, I don't know if you've heard of the 80%, 20% rule, where it's like, yeah. So like, you know, there is a point in anything where you get like 80% of the value at a certain amount of effort, and to get the next 20% requires like exponentially more effort, right? And keep an eye out for that break in everything you're doing, because it can sneak up on you. And oftentimes it's not, you know, the amount of time it takes you to get that extra 20%, you could be spending that same amount of time getting 80% elsewhere. And so keep an eye out for that and spread, you know, be conscious of it and say, just make the decision. Do I want to, you know, spend that extra disproportionate amount of time getting that 20% better in my degree, or that 20%, you know, more responsibility in the hackathon organizing team? Or do I want to use that time balancing out my life? That would be what I would say.
That's exactly what I did. It's like, I was more than happy with an 8 GPA out of 10. I did not put any single more efforts to go for a 9 GPA. I spent all that time in like open source and communities and stuff. So, and
now you're everywhere. You're all over my feed. I think like this also, obviously, like this advice definitely varies a little bit by university system. So it's very true for the UK, because in the UK, we have first degrees, second degrees, etc. First, which is the highest you can get, starts at actually 70%. And so you can go from 70 to 100%, you can go up, but it doesn't show up on the piece of paper. The piece of paper you have at the end of the day says first. And so once you hit 70%, literally, like, why are you bothering? Go do something else. And that's kind of the thing. But yeah.
Yeah. But that's also, it's like the GPA is related to like percentage in that way.